The man in front of him was extending a homemade hook toward the iron gate. Since this was his first attempt at escaping, his movements were slow and careful. He didn't dare alert the guards outside. Following the instructions of a fellow prisoner across from him, he shakily hooked the latch. With a gentle lift, he opened the window on the iron door and carefully lowered the cover to avoid making any noise, then reached out with his left hand to try opening the steel door. But just then, a guard suddenly rushed in. Panic-stricken, he locked the entrance behind him and pressed his body against the door, gasping for air. The prisoners, seeing his state, immediately grew tense and began asking what was happening outside the wagon. It sounded like there had been intense gunfire moments ago. Martin ignored their questions and instead walked straight to the first aid kit. He grabbed some alcohol and gauze and, gritting his teeth against the pain, poured alcohol onto his thigh, which had been grazed by a bullet. This sudden scene interrupted the prisoner who was attempting to escape. He quietly withdrew, waiting to see what would happen next. Before Martin could stand, the sound of a drill suddenly came from outside the wagon. Someone clearly was trying to break in. Though the prisoners didn't know exactly what was happening, they clapped and cheered, urging him to let everyone out. Martin, irritated by their noise, turned and yelled at them.
¡De aquí no va a salir ni Dios!
He then checked the driver's cabin via the monitor and saw a man dressed in black break in and pull out the camera. At that moment, Lamis, who had been preparing to escape, saw his chance and rushed out, aiming to grab Martin's keys. Martin immediately stood and slammed the iron gate shut, but Lamis, quick on his feet, jammed it with his foot, then grabbed Martin by the neck with his hands. Martin retaliated, jabbing his fingers into Lamis's eyes. Feeling sudden pain, Lamis exploded with strength, pushing Martin away, then moved in to fight him. But with a leg injury slowing him down, Martin was thrown into the corridor after a few rounds. At a critical moment, he pulled out his pistol from his waist, barely managing to regain control of the situation. He stood, intending to lock Lamis back in the cell, but then a sharp, acrid smell filled the entire wagon. An old man in the cell swept the floor with his hand and discovered it was covered in gasoline. Before he could call for Martin's help, a small flame was tossed through a hole. The fire quickly spread, even threatening the neighboring cells. If they didn't act, everyone would die here. Seeing this, Martin didn't hesitate any longer. He grabbed a fire extinguisher and helped the old man put out the fire. But unfortunately, the old man was ultimately burned alive. When Martin lifted his head again, he realized Lamis had taken advantage of his distraction to open all the cell doors. He immediately drew his pistol, trying to regain control of the chaos.